Hello, welcome back. I am Coach Andrew. We're going to be talking about planks and push-ups today. I've got my glasses on today, so you get super smart, Coach Andrew. You're welcome. So a couple of things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about proper planks, the difference between like elbow plank and like a full-on, what I just refer to as a hand plank. There's a little bit of difference between those exercises. We're going to talk about what they are, why you should do one over the other one. Sometimes people say like, oh, you should never do planks on your elbows. You should never do planks on your hands. Depends on what you want to accomplish with it, right? So there's different purposes for each exercise. As always, we're going to talk about planks. We're going to talk about push-ups. We're going to talk about proper form for both of those things, as well as recognition of when we are starting to have some errors and kind of how we can progress and regress our push-ups and planks specifically, okay? So let's get started. First off, elbow planks versus full-on planks. What's the difference? Why should we care? So first off, the difference in just what it actually looks like is going to be this. So a forearm plank, elbows straight down underneath shoulders. So we've got a nice 90-degree elbow here at the 90 degree at the elbow into our strong plank position here. Notice that the hips are not too high. I'm also not sagging down. So a neutral low back position. From there, bracing my abs, squeezing my glutes, my butt, making sure that everything's nice and tight, okay? Now, when we want to take a little bit of a different approach and we look at a full-on hand plank, hands are going to go exactly where the elbows were, just underneath and outside the shoulders, just a touch. Step back into this position. Shoulders are over the wrists, not too far out in front. That's a different exercise altogether, but I'm also making sure I'm not too far back behind. Okay? If you spread your plank out too much, what will end up happening is your body weight has to sink in somewhere. And often that's a low back, which is no good. That's a thumbs down, right? So we want to make sure that we are encouraging our core to take over that weight. We also want to make sure that we're giving our bodies like natural anatomy the opportunity to carry the weight. So that's why we want a nice strong 90 degree at the shoulder, right? Because 90 degrees, that weight's traveling straight down through my arm versus if I'm back behind, right? If my shoulders are behind my arms, that means my body weight is actually sinking down behind my arm, which is making me compensate somewhere else, again, almost always down into the low back, okay? So, next, why are they different? Why should you do one over the other one? So what I always tell people is if you want to be good at push-ups, you have to be able to do a plank from the hands, right? If all you ever do is forearm planks, you're never going to build up the shoulder stability to be able to do push-ups. Now, that's kind of where they differ in what they're accomplishing, right? A forearm plank is going to help isolate the abs a little bit because something's going to have to hold the body weight. Whereas when we're on hands, we're giving the shoulders the opportunity to start carrying that body weight and begin activating and stabilizing, and therefore we're strengthening up all sorts of different exercises from it, not just planks. All right, so that's the big difference between them. One's not right, one's not wrong. They're both great exercises, and I would encourage you to use both of them throughout your exercise routine and maybe switch back and forth. I like to have people go through plank transitions. Starting on an elbow plank, transition up to a hand, and then in control, bring yourself back down to the elbows. Making sure that we're not rocking back and forth, all sorts of weird stuff going on. Stay steady through the hips, keep the core tight, keep the glutes tight, right? So that's the main difference between our elbow plank and forearm plank, okay? Now, moving on from there, recognizing when we're in a good spot and when we're in a bad spot with those planks. So we're just gonna talk about hand planks from here on because we're gonna transition into push-ups in just a second here. So when we're looking at two primary form failures in planks. The first is going to be shoulder stability. So this is called a winging scapula. Basically, it's the idea of your shoulder blades, your scapula back here, making little mountain peaks, okay? So I'll show you kind of some from the front here. You might be able to see it, you might not be able to. We'll see kind of when we get to the end here. But the idea is when the shoulders are collapsing down. You might be able to see that my shoulder blades are poking out behind me here, and I'm ducking my head down. Usually those two go together hand in hand. The chin ducking down and shoulder blades collapsing, okay? The culprit of this is a muscle on the side of the ribs called serratus anterior, okay? And what that muscle does, it's got two jobs. So
if you play basketball, baseball, volleyball, a little bit of softball, specifically if you're not a pitcher in softball, even like goalies in soccer, right? If you're doing a lot of overhead throwing, this muscle is going to come in handy because it's actually going to decelerate the humerus, okay? So as we're doing all sorts of overhead movements, whether it's sets, spikes, pitches, even an underhand softball pitch, you're going to have to decelerate that humerus. But we're focusing on making sure that we're keeping our shoulder in a good position. So that's what that serratus anterior is doing. So your arm just doesn't fly off the handle and go, hitting the batter instead of the baseball. Neither of them are supposed to hit them, obviously. But we want to make sure they definitely don't get hit by a bloody stump of an arm. Second idea here is what that muscle is going to do is when the serratus anterior is strong enough to help stabilize the shoulder, the other muscles don't have to do it, okay? Typically, rotator cuff muscles can't handle much more than 15 pounds of pressure. So if we don't have a serratus anterior doing its job, now all of a sudden rotator cuff muscles are going to have to compensate for that lack of work being done by that bigger muscle. And that's not good, right? Because most people's upper body weighs more than 15 pounds, just on a whim, right? So one of the exercises we can do, if that is happening to you, if you're feeling your shoulders collapsing down, if you're having that winging scapula, just working on push-up plus drills, okay? So you can start from a all fours, knees and hands position here, making sure the abs are engaged, right? Nice neutral spine. But the idea is just push away, relax down. Not all the way down. We're coming to neutral, push away, neutral, push away, neutral, push away, okay? And you can always combo this with, since I'm in the yoga studio, a cat-cow exercise, right? Where we're inhaling and arching way up into this position and exhaling into the opposite position, right? So full on flexion, full on extension, working through the spine there. That's a great exercise to do for just warming up. It's also a great exercise to do for back muscle health. So stick that into the little feather hat there of exercises you can do. Now, moving back to planks, serratus anterior, why we should care. So, as I'm holding on to this position here, if the serratus anterior gives out, odds are my low back is not far behind, right? So we want to make sure we're engaged, pushing against the ground, active serratus. Feet here, my feet are about, maybe an inch or two apart, nothing crazy. We don't want to go too wide because then we deactivate the hips a little bit, and you can't really go too narrow. You can either go feet together or just farther apart. It's got to be comfortable for you, and it's got to be able to encourage you to be in good form. Okay. Now the idea is when we go in from planks to push-ups, your plank position should be strong enough that you can go straight into push-ups, right? You shouldn't have to adjust all sorts of things and move around to go into your push-ups. You should be able to go from the plank straight into the push-up. So I'm going to give you a nice little view of my bald spot here, and we'll watch some push-ups, right? All the way down, trying to touch the chest to the floor. From the side, you'll notice that the elbows stayed in pretty close there. We're going to talk about that in a second. From the side view, everything lowering and raising together, okay? That note right there, everything together, is usually where we see form failure number 2. And that is the idea that one will rise before the other, okay? Often called like a snake push-up. And honestly, if you're getting to the point where that's your push-up, drop down to the knees, do push-ups from the knees, and build up the stability here. Keep everything working together and moving at the same time, okay? Oftentimes when I have people come in, they're not able to do push-ups, what I'll have them do is we'll kind of break it into 2 different chunks, right? So I'll have them start from a plank, start from here, lower the knees, keep the stability alive, right? Push-up, pause, plank. Drop, push-up, pause, plank. Over time, as they get stronger through push-ups, planks, kneeling presses, a little bit of bench press work, all these different exercises that are going to tie together, that movement becomes more fluid, and we don't have to pause anymore. We can just go boom, 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 and maybe it'll be 2 full push-ups at once. Not at once, but 2 push-ups at a time, right? And then it's 3, and then it's 4, and then it's 5. And then all of a sudden, you're doing handstand push-ups because you feel like it, right? So, we've talked a little bit about that form failure with the plank. Let's talk about elbow position on that push-up, huh? So, unfortunately, a lot of young kids are being taught to do what I call the PE push-ups, right? Elbows outside. And if you're a PE coach that teaches push-ups correctly, proud of you. Just speaking towards kind of what I was taught growing up. So we don't want the elbows out here, right? If you're familiar with just biomechanics and geometry in general, this is a very long lever, right? A long lever is going to have a lot of tension on whatever is doing the work. So I'm going to show you this once because I don't like doing it. It's not comfortable. But the idea is if I'm pushing out way out here, I've got all sorts of weird tensions and pulls and pinches that I don't want happening, right? I've had shoulder surgery before, not interested in doing it again. So you think about, for us Midwesterners, let's say your car gets stuck in the snow and you need to push it. Do you walk up and push it from here? Or do you push your car from here? Or do you just call it tow truck? Preferably just call it tow truck. But if we can push from here, we've compacted the area that we're pressing from. It's a much stronger push. Same principle with our push-up. Instead of spreading out that force way out here, bring it in close, push nice and close, and you're gonna get a much stronger push-up, okay? That doesn't mean that like you're gonna have your hands right here, a narrow push-up, which is a different exercise. Again, altogether there's a million varieties of everything that we're doing here. But even if you are going for a narrow push-up, since I brought it up, we'll talk about it like a diamond push-up, right? So hands are together here, making sure that our shoulders are in a good position, okay? So shoulders are pulled backwards here. I'm not shrugging up, not forward, anything like that. But the idea is still the same. Elbows should be able to stay pretty close, okay? As long as you're keeping a good plank position, most push-ups are gonna be a good move for you, okay? So, a quick review. We talked about forearm planks. The difference between a forearm plank and a full-on hand plank, why you should be doing both, okay? What the purpose is of each one. Talked about how to progress a plank. No, we didn't. We didn't. Hey, this is why we do reviews. So let's talk about that real quick. So I want to make my plank harder, right? What's a great way to do that? You're going to actually pull yourself forward, whether it's on an elbow or on the hands. This is where we get into that forward lean I kind of talked about at the very beginning. But it's the idea of getting here, pulling forward. It's not just leaning forward, but I'm pulling through my arms. So my arms are actively pulling back against this mat, and I'm pulling my feet forward with my abs, right? So it's all the tension in here, and you'll feel that shake immediately, right? It's horrible. It sucks. So do that, right? So if we need to take our planks down a notch, we can always drop to the knees, just like the push-ups, or you can go at an angle, right? You can always plank at an angle. I don't have a good example in here. I don't have a box, unfortunately. But the idea is still the same of if I'm planking on an angle here, making sure that the rest of my body is still in a good line, okay? We don't want the low back to sag down, right? A good plank feels the abs, not the low back. Anytime you feel your low back, something is off, okay? So make sure you're keying in on that and fixing that. Squeeze the abs, squeeze the glutes. We talked about push-ups, how to increase and decrease those. And one of the best ways that you can attack it is by doing what you're capable of today, right? Don't worry about, oh, I can't do 65 push-ups in a row. Most people can't. Don't worry about it. Work with what you've got and continue to build from there, okay? So this has been week 2, talking about planks and push-ups. As always, if you guys have any questions, throw them down in the comments below. If one of the exercises helped out a lot, give me a shout out and be like, hey, that was a great drill. Thanks, I've never seen that, or I saw that a long time ago. Thanks for reminding me. Anything that you guys want to see next time, put it in the comments. Make sure you give me a thumbs up and a subscribe. Thanks, guys.